Welcome to Animal Posse, the podcast dedicated to the people and rescues making a difference in the lives of animals.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I have been getting a lot of requests to have a show on animal communication. So today I'm going to be welcoming Faun Fenderson, and that is exactly what she does. I know Faun from taking a class with her about 7 or 8 years ago on animal communication. I learned a lot, so I thought she would be a great guest to have on the show. Hi, Faun. How are you?
Hi, Dixie. I'm great. Had a
Well,
beautiful session this morning and just floating along.
great. I am excited to speak with you about animal communication. I know it's a subject that a lot of people have heard of, but I don't think a lot of people understand exactly what it is.
I could talk for years about it. Yes.
Great, great. Can you tell us about your background?
Sure. I have a very eclectic background. I'll just give you some highlights. I've done all kinds of different things from being a pastry chef to a wardrobe stylist for film and video. I was a chef's assistant on a cooking show. I practiced law. I've worked in restaurants, lots of different things. And at some point, I turned to esoteric things, and I have training in animal communication, in flower essences, in hands on energy work, in vibrational sound therapy. Currently, learning about color therapy, which is really cool. That's the highlights. Like I said, eclectic.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm into the esoteric things as well, like the sound therapy and all that kind of stuff. I do the Reiki. But of course, I have a passion for animals and animal rescue. Animal communication, people hear it and they just don't really understand what's involved in it. Before we get into explaining all of that, how is it that you found your way to animal communication specifically? Have you always had a love for animals?
Yes, I have. They haven't been in my life forever and ever, though when I was growing up, I have a lot of sisters, and we usually had a cat when we were growing up, and we had a dog at one point. And the turning point for animal communication for me was a cat friend of mine named Freddie, a one-eyed yellow tabby cat, who, as my husband likes to term it, was a urinary expressionist. What he did was he basically peed on everything. And when I say everything, I do mean everything. If his little booty could reach it, he peed on it. And he did his best to reach it. We tried everything with him, kitty Prozac and changing the diet, antibiotics, all kinds of allopathic medicine things and whatever. And finally, I had a friend who said, "Oh, I know this woman who's a pet psychic. Maybe you ought to try her." And I thought, okay, so what did I have to lose? So I called her, made an appointment, and it was amazing what Freddie had to say. And we went through a lot of sessions with this woman named Netta Wittels, who was actually turned out to be my teacher later on. And at one point, after a few sessions with Netta, I said, "I would really like to know how to do this." And so I asked her about it, and she said, "Well, I teach classes. I don't have any right now, but I'll let you know when I do." And so she did, and we had an awesome class with 6 other women, and it was amazing. So it was Freddie, really, who turned my head in that direction.
So now you use the term pet psychic. Would you consider yourself a pet psychic?
No, ma'am. As a matter of fact, I only said that because that's what the person said to me. As a matter of fact, I really cannot stand that term. I think it does not aptly explain what we do in animal communication. Yeah.
What exactly is animal communication and how do you define it and how does it work for
Yeah,
you?
sure. You have 2 words there, animal and communication, and those are basically explains it. You have an animal, or it could be, can communicate with anyone, plant, rock, whatever, tree, but we're talking about animals right now. So you have an animal and then you have communication. So that means the same thing as if you were having a communication with humans. You are having a conversation, basically. You might ask, how do you have a communication with an animal that doesn't speak human? And that's where the definition comes in. So, animal communication is communicating in a way that is non physical, mostly, that is telepathic, we'll put it that way. And how this happens is, think of it like this: everything is energy. It's easier to see it when you look at things that you can see that have energy, that are moving, like the wind, and your body has energy and movement and that sort of thing. But when you think about the energy from animals and their thoughts, our thoughts, they're all energy and they're out there moving around. So basically, my energy, my thoughts, my psyche, if you will, is going to reach out and tap on the energy of an animal and say, shall we have a conversation? And it's a little not quite so formal, but it can be. And you basically have a conversation. When I'm doing a communication for a client, what I do is we have a phone call or a Zoom call, and it's basically the human, the animal, and me, and I am acting as a translator, more or less, between the animal and the human, where the human has questions or things that they want to discuss with their animal friend, and I ask them, and I ask them out loud so that the human knows that I'm asking them. But what I'm really doing is I'm sending the energy vibration through my words and other energy that I'm sending to the animal, which can be lots of different things. How they receive it is for them, whether it's thoughts, images, sound, vibration. The animal receives it and the animal sends me back a response. And then my brain basically translates that into, for lack of a better word, a language for me to spit out for the human to understand. Sometimes it comes in images, it comes as sounds. A lot of times it comes in feelings, especially if I'm asking a question about a body part and what's going on there. And like I said, then I translate it to the human.
I think this is something that a lot of people do naturally with their pets at home and they just don't realize that they're doing it. People speak to their animals all the time. If you have animals that live in your house, you're speaking with your animals. You might be like, if your animal comes up to you, oh, you want a treat? Oh, you want to play? Oh no, we're not going to go outside right now for our walk. It's just like a natural conversation that you have with your animals, and I don't think people all the time realize that they're technically communicating with their animals. Their animals are telling them, they're verbalizing a response, I think, sometimes without even realizing what they're doing.
Yes, animals are much smarter than humans. They understand human. And sometimes, so as a good example is I have communicated with animals who live in different countries, and the human speaks their regular language, French or whatever, but they also speak English, and we conduct the communication in English because that would be easier for me. But and the animal most likely speaks French with the human or whatever language. But they understand whatever it is because it's from the vibration. And just like you were describing, the animal very definitely understands what the human is saying, not necessarily the words per se, but the vibration of it. And because it's much broader than the words convey. And they do understand that. And they, in their very clever way, dumb down their answers so that the human understands what's going on by barking, meowing, doing some physical action so that the human understands that they do understand. And that is a form of communication, although it's a one-way communication because the human isn't really getting all the information they could from the conversation with the animal. They're just getting the highlights that the animal is able to convey to them in a way that humans understand. Yes, people do communicate on a regular basis with their animals. And again, animals do understand when you tell them, I'll be home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They understand. And while you think, how are they telling time? It's the vibration of it. And they understand your intent. They understand the larger scope of it. So it's really incredible when animals really do understand. So the biggest thing in communication with animals is really being able to hear them. We convey information to them, they understand it, but we don't really listen to what they give back to us, other than whatever physical response they're giving us. So it can be much deeper than what we're getting, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I understand that. And now, for people who may be skeptical too, when you say telepathy, and I understand that, I understand what you mean because I took a class with you. But
Hmm.
for anyone who might be thinking, okay, this sounds a little bit of woo woo, one easy thing is to think about bringing your cat or your dog to the vet. How do they know they're going to the vet before you go get them to go to the vet and they're hiding already? And I know most people have probably experienced that because I know for me that happens all the time. You don't have to say anything, no verbalization. You go to get them to go to the vet and they're hiding because it's like they know they're going to the vet.
They definitely read your mind. They hear and feel your thoughts, definitely. With skeptics, I mean, sometimes it's just choosing the right words to explain it. And for others, it's having good examples for them with their own animals. Some really poignant ones have been having the client ask a question that only they would know the answer to, they and the animal. And when the animal gives the answer through me, then how would I know? That's the best way to explain for skeptics. But there are some people who are not ready to take that leap yet, and that's fine. Everybody is where they are, and that's what makes the world go round. We're all different. And you asked something a little bit ago about, is it something natural? And the answer to that is yes. We all, every one of us, even the skeptics, come into the world with the ability to communicate telepathically, whether it's with other humans or animals or whoever. And until a certain age, a very tender age, some people have a designated age, but it happens at different ages for various people. Some say at 7 it goes away, but I don't subscribe to that. But I find that what happens is something happens usually. Either it's something traumatic or the child just gets badgered down from peers and adults who say, you're a big girl now. Stop imagining things. After the child has been saying, oh, I talked to my pet squirrel and she told me blah, blah, blah. And after you've said that so many times and the human keeps saying, no, you're just imagining that, then they either go covert, which some do, or just turn it off because they don't want to be embarrassed by the adults. For me, what happened was at a very early age, I was 3 years old. I witnessed my grandfather and my uncle kill a chicken. And it wasn't even so much the physical sight, which was really traumatic in itself, but the energy, the voice of the chicken in my head was scary, is the word that's coming up. I guess when you're 3 years old, scary is how it would seem, but it was just overwhelming, totally overwhelming. So that I just, maybe not consciously, but just in my brain said, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm just not going to listen on that channel, and turned it off. And then it took remembering many years later when Freddie inspired me to take that step. So sure that there are many stories that many people have about having imaginary friends or speaking with animals when they were growing up. And at some point, it just went away because of their own personal story. Usually it's adults shaming them. But yes, everyone can do it. It's just a matter of remembering and practice. Practice is the main thing, just like anything else. At some point, you remember, you get a glimpse of it, a glimmer. But if you don't practice it, then it's the same thing. It's like speaking French. If you learn how to speak French, but you don't speak French very frequently, then when someone comes up to you and speaks French, you say, "Oh, that sounds familiar, but what exactly did they say?" That kind of like that.
After you took your first class and you learned how to actually communicate, and I guess when I say communicate, you learned how to translate what the animal was saying. What was that first like aha moment when you were able to do it? Who was the first animal you communicated to, or what was the first time you realized that this is something that I can do and I'm going to venture into it further?
So that really happened with Freddie before I even took Netta's class. Netta's class was amazing because it was like a seminar in a way where the six of us all worked together and communicated with each other's animals. That's a whole other topic. But so with Freddie, and I told Netta that I wanted to be able to do that, she gave me a tip, which was amazing. And I think I share this for anybody to try as well. Water for me is very conductive, and I do some of my best, for lack of a better word, thinking and meditating and that sort of thing in the bathtub. I'll have a nice long soak in the tub and with the intention of doing whatever I'm going to do. And so what I did was, Netta's suggestion was, I had a notepad and a pen with me, and I just started asking Freddie questions. And then what you do is you write down what comes to you. You don't think about it, you just write it down. Then you ask the next question and keep going and keep going. And while it's going on, in your mind, you're saying, oh, this is BS. I'm making this up, and so on and so forth. But when you get to the end, when you've asked all the questions and written down all of the responses, and you go back or wait to get out of the bathtub and have a little bit of time in between. And by the way, you don't have to do it in the bathtub. It works perfectly well without a bathtub. Just a quiet moment or two. And when you go back and you look at those questions and answers, you will be totally flabbergasted. And you know that you did not make that up. And that is definitely probably my first aha moment. It was like, okay, I got it. And so then after that, you really just start getting out of your own way. You just practice more. And I think that's why I took Netta's class, because the way that she described that particular class was going to be, it was going to be a lot of practice with other people's animals. And we did it online through chat group and so on and so forth. And we were doing stuff, communicating with animals every single day and writing reports to each other about how it went. It's getting out of that place where you think, I'm making it up or I can't do this. A lot of it is, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And you just have to soldier on, go through it and keep doing it and keep practicing and keep finding the ways that you receive information. And everyone receives information differently. That, how I said I was translating things. A lot of people have an idea that they're going to get the information in such and such a way. And I don't know, everybody has their own idea of how it's going to be. And it's not necessarily that way, because we each receive our own information in our own way. And by the way, it actually changes over time and develops. Lately have really been amazed at how I'm receiving information. I used to receive information more as images and sounds, and now it's a whole lot more in the realm of feeling, which is more expansive. And in the beginning also, it was more a way of just a knowing, like you just know that's what they said. You don't have any image, no sound, nothing. It's just a knowing. And I guess that's a good place to say the different ways that people receive information would have to do with all of the clairs. Clairvoyance, okay, that's seeing, clear seeing, clairaudience, hearing things, clairsentience, feeling things, claircognizance, that's the clear knowing. I don't know if anyone would get information by tasting, but why not? There's so many ways that you can receive information, and you just have to be open to getting it and noticing. And what that takes is slowing down and focusing and just allowing things to come the way they are without any judgment or preconceived idea of what should be. And that's why I say getting out of our own way, because that's where the biggest problem is. People just aren't built, or we've forgotten how to do it. So it takes a little while to get over that stumbling block. Not for everybody, but we all have our own little quirks there.
Can you elaborate more too with Freddie? Were you able to solve his urinary expressionism?
Yeah, we got it toned down a bit, but there was a certain event that came up. I know you might be too young to remember it, but in 2001, there was this huge tsunami in the Far East. I want to say Burma or Thailand or somewhere that devastated a huge amount of land and property and animals. And Freddie was, I didn't realize it, but on the day that happened, Freddie went running around the house. I have a 2-story house, peeing everywhere, running up the stairs, peeing, running all the way around upstairs, everywhere, peeing, running, peeing, everywhere, pee, pee. And it turned out that he was feeling that tsunami and the animals in particular, and he was overwhelmed and really upset that he couldn't do anything. And he just had to let it out, and that's what he did. And so after that, we had a conversation with Netta. What we did was I linked Freddie with one of Netta's cats, who was also an orange tabby, whose name was Sakara, and had Freddie and Sakara work together on, I don't know what the right word would be, toning down or somehow dealing with that anxiety, and that helped more than anything, let me tell you. But it took a long time to get to that point. And as a result of that, Freddie became a part of a cat group that many animal communicators know about. This cat group. It's called the OCC, the Orange Cat Consortium. And it's all orange cats, who some in the physical and some in spirit, who all work together to help other cats. And so Freddie became a part of that, and it gave him a job, a purpose, and that helped a lot. He never, to the day that he passed, he always peed on stuff, but not as much. A whole lot less at the end, a whole lot less. But yeah, Freddie was very special. And just spoke to him the other day, and yeah, he's working with some of my cats in spirit, which is cool.
Do you have any
Mhm.
other interesting stories that you would like to share?
Oh, there are hundreds. This is one for skeptics in a way, but it's an odd thing for skeptics. So, in one of the things that I did with Netta was she created also a practice group where we could practice with other animals. And she found people who were, and whose animals were willing to work with us. And so each of us, whoever was in this group, would had certain questions to ask these animals. And then we would get together on a phone call and talk about what answers we got. And there was one cat by the name of Max. He lived in New York City. And we were asked certain questions, and every single person got a different answer from Max. Totally different, bizarre, which is unheard of, really. And then while we're having this phone call and everybody's talking about their answers, and I guess I was the last person to give their answers, I heard Max laughing in the background, and I went, wait a minute here, what's going on? So on the phone call, I asked him, did you make that up? And he just went, yep. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it sounds like a
Yeah.
cat.
And then I had, this one is also amusing. I was asked to communicate with the dog, who the human thought he was doing something, wanted to know why the dog was standing under this plant. Thought it was the weirdest thing and couldn't understand what it was about. And so it turned out that the dog liked to stand under the plant because It felt like it was on vacation when it stood under the plant. It was somewhere else. It was green and nice, and it just liked to hang out there. So there are all kinds of reasons why things happen. This is one kind of for rescuers. I was contacted to help someone find a dog that had run away. And it was one of those situations where the people were moving. They were actually moving cross country, and they had to sell their house and all of that kind of stuff. And they were going to drive because they had some belongings that they needed to physically take that they didn't want to send with a shipper or what. I don't know what their reason was, but they were driving there. And on the day that they were getting ready to leave, they were going to take the dog to another human's house, someone who had stayed with the dog before, and the dog knew. And I think the dog had even been at this person's house before. And they were going to have the dog stay with this person for a couple of weeks until they could come back and get the dog and drive her, I think it was, back to the West Coast where they were moving. And the dog, they took the dog to the person's house, and the dog ran away from the person's house. And they were all just totally heartbroken and upset. And they didn't know what to do because they were scheduled to be going and they couldn't find the dog. And they were worried because it was out in the woods, and it was going to be cold and dark and whatever. And to make a story short, when I connected with the dog, she was really heartbroken herself because no one had told her what was going on. She could tell because they had packed everything up that they were leaving. And she thought that they were just going to dump her with this person and that was it. And it was like gone pecan. She was out of their life, and it just broke her heart. She didn't want to live, really. So she was going out to hide and whatever. So eventually what we did was we got her to understand that with the call with the human on the line as well, so the human could send their vibration through their voice and the dog could hear that as well, that they were not leaving her, that it was temporary, and that they were going to be back, and that they didn't want to leave her, but it was the way that they had to do it for the time being. And they were sorry that they didn't explain to her what was going on beforehand, and please would she come back. And we made some arrangements, picked some, I don't know, how do you explain it? Some markers, basically, where we could tell where she was. She would describe some things where she was, and so we figured out where she was. And the humans asked that she go towards such and such whatever property, and that the woman who was there was going to come pick her up, and they did. And so and that all worked out well. But that was really came about because nobody talked to her ahead of time, and she was really sad and upset and just didn't want to be there anymore because she felt abandoned. And but it all worked out. She moved to California with them, and everybody's happy now.
Yeah, that's good. I would like to share a story that I have, and this happened shortly after I took a class with you.
Hmm.
I was a volunteer at an adoption center, and there was this cute little orange tabby in there. And he was about, I'm going to say 7, 8 months at the time. He was pulled from the local animal shelter, and real cute little guy, except he had a problem with biting. Like you never knew when he was going to bite you. He would be fine. You'd pet him fine. And then all of a sudden, he would bite you and he would bite you hard. So I told the group that I was volunteering with, look, I'm going to take him home and I'm going to work with him and I'm going to see if I can control this biting and get him to stop this biting. He came home with me. His name when he came from the shelter was Donovan. That's just the name that they randomly picked and randomly assigned to him. And it was a couple weeks. He was home with me. And like I said before this, it was maybe a couple months prior I had taken your class. And I didn't actively try to communicate with him, but it was that thing where you just get that knowing. And I understand what you mean by that knowing. I know some people might not understand that. And it came to me that the problem was his name. He did not like the name Donovan at all. So I changed his name. And after we changed that name, he stopped with the biting. I know it sounds crazy and people are going to probably think this is just like really far off, but I changed his name from Donovan and he stopped the biting.
Yep. I had a client with that exact same situation, but it was a dog. And the human called the dog Skipper. And the dog started really acting out, doing all kinds of stuff, inappropriate things. And that's why the human asked me to speak to him. And that was exactly it. The dog said, "My name is Skip. It is not Skipper." And when the human started calling him Skip instead of Skipper, he was the sweetest dog. And a lot of that really had to do with the sound of the word skipper was childish, and Skip was more respectful and, how can I say, gave him a more stature, if you can imagine that, especially for a small dog. And yeah, same thing. The dog did not like that name. So yes, it happens often. Here's a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Did you ask the cat what name he wanted to be called?
I did.
Okay, good.
His name is Mercer. Okay. I don't know where he came up with that one, but his name is Mercer now. And he
Cool.
likes it. So that's what we go with.
Mhm.
We always joke about it. We don't ever say the word Donovan in the house because he just does not like that name at all.
But yes, yep.
How do you think animal communication could be practically applied to animal rescue or overall animal welfare efforts?
So there are a lot of different ways to look at that. The first aspect of that is when you understand what animal communication means. And I tried, I hope, to convey that when we first were talking about it. It's like having a communication with anyone. Basically, it's important to have respect for the other that you're having the conversation with. And when you realize that's what you're doing, you're actually having a conversation with them. You're not telling them what to do or just giving a speech at them, although that tends to be what we do. So a lot of times with humans too, by the way. But if you think of communicating with animals as if you were having a conversation or having some sort of a connection or communication with your best friend, then that idea of respect really should come to the forefront. And that really, I think, when people who do animal work at all understand that respect is very important in dealing with anyone else, and in particular, dealing with any other beings, any other animals, then you will get much different results than just applying your own desires upon them. For instance, when you go to scoop up kittens that you found somewhere, do you ever consider that there's a mother somewhere, or there could be, and do you check communication wise to see if there is, and is that mother ready for her kittens to be snatched? Communication also has to do with, okay, everyone knows about the dog that was running around forever for Scrim for a year, something like that. I actually spoke to him, and on behalf of the woman who was the initial contact for him. And he said that he liked living on the street. You have to take it a bit further and find out what that's about and explain what you have to offer, why it might be better for them, and give them the choice as well. Again, it goes back to respect. And so people often then use the term, okay, they're feral, and that's why they're acting the way they are. They live on the street, yes. Does that mean they're wild? Not necessarily. It just means that's where they live, is on the street. And you need to find out, what is their story? What's that about? And how does what you want to do based on your idea of what's help work for them? And how can you work together? And that's the big thing too. That's where the respect comes in. How can you work together with them as opposed to just imposing your will on them? And then, so if you go back to the idea of thinking of them and treating them as your best friend, would you do that to your best friend? Just impose your will on them? Oh, maybe we shouldn't ask a question, but that's my view about it.
What is the most rewarding aspect of your work with animals and their human companions?
It's twofold. For the animal, the most rewarding thing is, for the most part, they are usually so happy to have someone listen to them because they want to be heard. They definitely want to be heard, and they are so grateful for that. And for the humans, it's the same way, but it's the flip of that. It's where the humans say, I had no idea. And it's also showing them, helping them to see a new way of looking at their relationship with their animal friends. And that those two things are super rewarding because I I believe that when all of us on this planet communicate with each other the way that we are able to, then things will be so much more peaceful and less illness and so on and so forth. And that's what it comes down to, is having those communications, and that means listening, not just speaking.
Before we end the call, where can people find more information about you and your work and your classes?
I have a website, and it's called heartscommunicate.com. It's hearts plural communicate.com. And that's basically because we do communicate from our heart when we communicate naturally. That's where all of our esoteric abilities come from, our heart, not our brain.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Fawn. I really enjoyed our conversation. Like I said, this is
Thank,
one thing that I'm passionate about as well, in addition to animals. I'm all into the more spiritual side of things. And I do find it beneficial for me in rescue. Hopefully, this conversation can help some other animals as well.
thank you, Dixie. I am delighted that you asked me to speak to your group, and I'm also delighted to hear that you use it in your work. That's wonderful.
Did learn a lot from your class. And so, all that stuff that I did learn, I use that today.
That's great. And I feel, and I'm sure that you can see that as well, that the more that you practice and the more you branch out, the more your abilities, as they say, will develop and deepen.
Definitely. Now, the funny thing for me is I find dogs are more open than cats are, but I do cat rescue. So, go figure, right?
This is my prejudice as well. I think cats are more complicated, dogs are simpler. That could be why.
That's it for today's episode. I want to thank everybody for listening and supporting us. If you want to take that an extra step, consider becoming a member. We just added this to our website, animalposse.com. Scroll down, look for the support tab. Our membership program is going to help us directly support animals in need, whether that be through vaccinations, food, or spay neuter efforts.
Paws in the night, claws in the fight, whiskers twitch and tails take flight. They're calling in stories to spin, from the wild to the heart within. Broken wings and hopeful springs, we're the voices for these things. Animal This is the bond, the holy